When my mother laughed at the check in the restaurant parking lot, calling it a sad little prop to humor a confused old man, I almost believed her. She had spent 40 years defining reality for our family, after all. But when the teller at North Alder Credit Union scanned the slip of paper and asked if I was the authorized recipient for $20,000, I realized the only thing fake about that night was my mother's concern. The linen tablecloth at the hearth was a heavy, starched white, the kind that felt like a barrier between you and the rest of the world. I spent most of the dinner smoothing a wrinkle near my water glass, trying to disappear into the fabric. It was an early birthday dinner for my grandfather, Harold, though his actual birthday was still 3 weeks away. My mother, Diane, had insisted on the schedule. She said it was better to celebrate early, just in case he was having a good week. The implication, heavy and unsaid, was that his bad weeks were becoming the standard. I looked across the table at him. Harold was 79 years old, and he did not look confused. He looked tired. He was wearing his best navy suit, the one with the slightly frayed lapel he refused to replace, and he was cutting his pot roast with a deliberate, rhythmic precision. He hadn't said much since the appetizers arrived, mostly because there wasn't any room in the conversation. Diane had filled every silence with updates about her kitchen renovation, her garden club disputes, and pointed questions about my job that were actually criticisms wrapped in concern. "So, Lucy," she said, pausing to sip her Chardonnay, "are you still working those late hours at the design firm?" "I only ask because you look exhausted. It is worrying. A woman your age should be building a life, not just a portfolio. I am 33. Mom," I said, keeping my voice even, "and I like my job." "The hours are part of the industry." Diane sighed, a long, tragic sound that suggested my career choice was a personal affliction she had to endure. "Well, as long as you are happy being so independent, I suppose some people are just built for solitude." I saw Harold's hand pause. His knife scraped against the porcelain plate, a sharp screech that made Diane wince. He looked up, his eyes blue and surprisingly sharp behind his wire-rimmed glasses. He looked directly at me, bypassing his daughter entirely. "You look professional." "Lucy," Harold said. His voice was gravelly but clear. "You look like someone who pays her own bills. That is a good thing." Diane gave a tight, indulgent laugh and patted Harold's arm, as if he were a toddler who had just correctly identified a color. "Of course, Dad. We are all very proud of Lucy's little victories." The dinner dragged on for another 40 minutes. When the check came, Diane snatched it up with a practiced martyrdom, waving off my offer to split it. It was part of the theater. She paid for everything because paying gave her the right to narrate our lives. As we stood up to leave, the bustle of the restaurant covering the sound of chairs scraping the floor, Harold moved close to me. He smelled of Old Spice and peppermint, the scent of my childhood, while Diane was busy charming the hostess near the coat check. Harold pressed something into my hand. It was a standard white envelope, sealed shut. The paper felt warm from being in his pocket. "Put this away," he murmured. The urgency in his voice made my stomach tighten. "Do not open it here. Wait until you are alone. Do you understand me?" "Lucy?" "Alone." I looked at him, startled. His face was inches from mine, and the fog that Diane claimed was consuming his mind was nowhere to be seen. He looked terrified, but he also looked determined. "Okay, Grandpa," I whispered. I slipped the envelope into the inside pocket of my blazer. "Lucy? Dad?" Diane's voice cut through the air like a whip crack. She was standing by the heavy oak door, holding Harold's coat. The charm was gone from her face, replaced by a hawk-like alertness. "What are you two whispering about?" "Nothing," Harold said, his posture slumping back into the passive shape he usually adopted around her. "Just saying goodbye to my granddaughter." We walked out into the parking lot. The air in Briar Glen was crisp, smelling of damp leaves and impending rain. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long, harsh shadows on the asphalt. I walked Harold to Diane's pristine SUV. As he climbed into the passenger seat, I saw Diane's eyes dart to my blazer. She had seen the transfer. I knew she had. She noticed everything. She closed Harold's door and turned to me, her car keys dangling from her finger. "What did he give you?" she asked. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. I felt a spike of adrenaline. I crossed my arms, feeling the sharp corner of the envelope against my ribs. Nothing. Just an old photo he found. He wanted me to have it. Diane stared at me for 3 long seconds. She was calculating whether to push, whether to make a scene in the parking lot where the neighbors might see. She decided against it. "He is rummaging through those boxes again," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He gets so fixated on the past. It is the dementia. Lucy, it makes him obsessive. Don't encourage him. If he gives you trash, just throw it away. Don't let him think it is important." I nodded, feeling a sick sort of guilt for lying, and a fiercer need to protect whatever was in my pocket. "Good night, Mom." I waited until her taillights disappeared around the corner before I got into my own car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't even take off my shoes. I sat down at my small kitchen table and pulled the envelope out. It was plain. No markings on the outside. I slid my thumb under the flap and tore it open. Inside, there was a single rectangular slip of paper. I stared at it. I blinked, sure that I was misreading the numbers. It was a personal check. The background was a pale blue security pattern. In the upper left corner, it read Harold Weller, with his address in Maple Barrow. The date was today's date, and the amount, written in Harold's shaky but legible cursive, was $20,000. I sat back, the chair creaking under me. $20,000. Harold lived on a pension and Social Security. He was careful with money, famously frugal. He saved aluminum foil. He repaired his own shoes. He didn't have $20,000 to just hand out. I looked at the bank name, North Alder Credit Union. I had never heard of it. Harold had banked with the big national chain in town for as long as I could remember. There was a note paper clipped to the back of the check. It was written on a scrap of lined notebook paper. "For what you carried when no one thanked you." My throat closed up. The memory hit me hard. 7 years ago, when my father, Diane's first husband, had his stroke. I had dropped out of my master's program for 2 semesters to come home and help. I drove him to therapy. I managed his meds. I sat with him through the nights when he was scared. Diane had been too overwhelmed, too fragile. Everyone praised her for being so strong, but I was the one changing the sheets. When he died, the family narrative became about Diane's tragic loss. My time, my sacrifice, was just expected. It was what a daughter did. Harold had seen. I picked up my phone. It was 9 o'clock. I dialed his landline, praying Diane wouldn't pick up. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Harold's voice. He sounded breathless, like he had been waiting by the phone. "Grandpa, it's me," I said. "I just opened the envelope. This is too much. Is this real?" "Listen to me," he said. The passivity from dinner was completely gone. His voice was sharp, precise. "Do not say the amount. Do not say the bank name. Just listen. It is real. But you don't have this kind of money." I said, "Mom says, your mother does not know everything." He cut in. "And she must not know about this. Lucy, listen to me. Deposit it tomorrow. Do not cash it. Deposit it. And do not tell a soul." "Why?" I asked. I was gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. "Why all the secrecy?" "Because if you don't take it, it disappears," he said. "Go to the branch on 4th Street. Tomorrow morning. Now hang up. She is coming back from the laundry room." The line clicked dead. I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the check. The blue paper seemed to glow under the overhead light. It felt dangerous. It felt like a smoking gun. The next day was a Tuesday. I had taken the morning off work, telling my boss I had a dental emergency. The check was in my purse, tucked into a zippered pocket. I felt its presence like a hot coal. I needed reassurance. It was a weakness of mine. I had spent my whole life looking to my mother for permission to trust my own reality, and old habits died hard. I convinced myself that I was overreacting. that Harold was just being eccentric, and that maybe, just maybe, if I framed it right, Diane would explain it away without a fight. I drove to her house before going to the bank. It was a mistake. I knew it the moment I walked into her kitchen. Diane was hosting. My Aunt Sarah and my cousin Miller were there, sitting at the granite island, drinking coffee. The air smelled of vanilla and expensive cleaning products. "Lucy!" Diane chirped, her public mask firmly in place. What a surprise. We were just talking about Harold's dinner last night. He seemed to be declining, didn't he? I stood by the doorway, clutching my purse. "Actually, I thought he seemed sharp," I said. Diane exchanged a look with Aunt Sarah. A look of pitying patience. "Oh, honey, you don't see the day-to-day. He hides it well for company." I took a breath. He gave me a check. "Mom." The room went silent. Diane set her coffee mug down. The ceramic clinked loudly against the granite. "He did what?" she asked. "He gave me a check," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "For $20,000. He said he wanted me to have it." Diane stared at me. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile you give a child who has just claimed to see Santa Claus. "Oh, Lucy," she said. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Let me see it." I pulled the check out. I didn't hand it to her. I just held it up. Diane squinted at it, then burst into laughter. She turned to Aunt Sarah. "Look at that. North Alder Credit Union? He hasn't had an account there since the 90s. He probably found an old checkbook in the attic and started scribbling zeros. It looks real." "Mom," I said, though my confidence was cracking, "it is a prop." "Lucy," Diane said, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye, "it is a prop for his fantasy life. He forgets he's retired, forgets he's on a fixed income. He hands these things out to feel important. He gave the mailman a check for $1 million last week. We had a good laugh about it." Miller snickered into his coffee cup. Diane's narrative was taking hold. I was the gullible daughter, and Harold was the senile father, and Diane was the sanity holding it all together. "You aren't actually going to try to deposit that, are you?" Diane asked, her voice dropping to a tone of concern. "Honey, don't embarrass yourself at the bank. They will laugh you out of the building. It will bounce so hard, it will leave a dent in the ceiling." I looked at the check again. Harold's signature was shaky, yes, but it was specific. The date was correct. And the look in his eyes last night, that hadn't been fantasy. "I think I'm going to try," I said. Diane's face hardened. She stopped laughing. "Lucy, don't be stupid. You are validating his delusions. It is cruel. If you go to the bank, you are proving that you are just as confused as he is." "I'm going," I said. I turned around and walked out. Behind me, I heard Diane say to Aunt Sarah, loudly enough for me to hear. She always did have trouble accepting reality. "It is sad. Really." I sat in my car in Diane's driveway for 5 minutes, breathing hard. My face was burning. The shame was a physical weight on my chest. "Don't embarrass yourself." The words echoed. What if she was right? What if I walked up to a teller and handed over a piece of worthless paper? I would be the joke of the family for the next decade. Remember when Lucy tried to cash Grandpa's play money? But I remembered the phone call. "Do not say the amount. It is real." I put the car in reverse. The North Alder Credit Union was on the other side of town, in a brick building that looked like it hadn't been renovated since 1980. It was quiet inside. There were no sleek touchscreens or upbeat pop music, just the hum of an air conditioner and the scratching of pens. I walked up to the teller window. The woman behind the glass had gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and a name tag that read, Mrs. Higgins. She looked like she had worked there since the foundation was poured. "How can I help you?" she asked, not looking up from her sorting. "I have a check to deposit," I said. I slid my debit card and the check under the glass partition. I held my breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was ready for the scoff. I was ready for her to push it back and tell me the account didn't exist. Mrs. Higgins picked up the check. She adjusted her glasses. She looked at the amount. Then, she stopped. The air in the bank seemed to change. The ambient noise dropped away. Mrs. Higgins looked up at me. Really looked at me. For the first time. Her expression wasn't amusement. It was surprise, bordering on alarm. "One moment. Please," she said. Her voice was lower now. She typed something into her keyboard. A lot of typing. She picked up the phone at her station and punched in a 4-digit extension. Turning her back to me to whisper into the receiver, my face went hot. "Here it comes." I thought, the security guard is going to escort me out. Mrs. Higgins hung up the phone and turned back. She took a stamp and pressed it firmly onto the back of the check. Endorsed. She looked at me through the glass, her eyes searching my face. "You are Lucy Brooks?" "Yes," I said, my voice barely a squeak. "And Mr. Weller gave this to you directly?" "Yes. Last night." She nodded slowly. "Okay. I have processed the deposit. The funds will be available within the standard window, though given the nature of the originating account, it should clear immediately." I blinked. It cleared? It cleared. Mrs. Higgins said. She slid a receipt toward me. "Is there anything else? Ms. Brooks?" "No," I stammered. "No, thank you." I walked out of the credit union feeling like I was floating. It was real. Diane was wrong. The $20,000 was real. I checked my banking app as soon as I got to my car. My balance, usually hovering around $2,000, now read $22,418. I stared at the screen until my phone dimmed. Why did he have this? And why did Diane lie so aggressively about it? She hadn't just said she didn't know. She had invented a story about him giving $1 million check to the mailman. She had tried to shame me into destroying it. I drove home in a daze. I tried to focus on work for the rest of the afternoon, but my mind kept drifting back to the check. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Ms. Brooks?" It was a woman's voice, pleasant but robotic. "This is Member Services calling from North Alder Credit Union." My stomach dropped. Had they made a mistake? Was the money gone? "Yes. This is Lucy. We are calling to verify a transaction posted to your account today. Check number 402. We just need to update our files. Are you now considered an authorized recipient for the custodial reserve?" I paused. The phrase was strange. Not account holder, not beneficiary. Authorized recipient for the custodial reserve. I suppose so. I said, "My grandfather gave me the check." "Wonderful." The woman said, "We will note that in the file. Thank you for your time." She hung up before I could ask what a custodial reserve was. I paced my apartment that evening. The sun went down, turning the sky a bruised purple. I didn't turn on the lights. I felt watched. The victory of the money clearing was fading, replaced by a creeping unease. Harold's precision, Diane's panic, the bank's strange terminology. At 8:30, my phone buzzed again. I missed the call. It was from a blocked number. I stared at the notification. New voicemail. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. The voice was male. It was calm, smooth, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Ms. Brooks, we see that a check was processed today. It is unfortunate that you were involved in this confusion. If you care about your grandfather, truly care about him, do not deposit anything else. It would be best for everyone if you forgot where that money came from." The message ended. I stood in the dark, the phone cold against my cheek. The check wasn't a gift. It wasn't just savings. Harold had given me $20,000, but the money was the least important part of the package. He had handed me a key to something that had been locked away for a long time, and someone was very, very afraid that I was about to open the door. I looked out the window at the street below. A car was idling across the street. It was probably just a neighbor. Probably. I dialed Harold's number again, but this time, nobody answered. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up with the lights on. The receipt from North Alder Credit Union sitting on my nightstand like a declaration of war. Diane had told me not to embarrass myself. She had no idea what she had just started. The morning after the deposit, the sky over Maple Barrow was a flat, slate gray. I drove to my grandfather's house with the radio off, the silence inside the car heavy with the memory of that robotic voicemail. If you care about your grandfather, do not deposit anything else. The threat had been polite, which made it worse. It implied a system, a set of rules I had violated without even knowing they existed. Harold lived in a small, brick bungalow on Elm Street, a house that had smelled the same for 30 years, like sawdust and lemon polish. When I unlocked the front door with my key, I expected to find him in bed, or perhaps sitting in his recliner staring at the television. The way Diane always described him to the family, "Dad is fading," she would say. "He just sits there." I found him at the kitchen table, fully dressed in a pressed button-down shirt and suspenders, reading the newspaper with a magnifying glass. He didn't look faded. He looked like a man waiting for a train. He looked up as I entered, folding the newspaper precisely in half. "Lucy," he said, "you are early." I walked over and kissed his cheek. His skin was paper-thin, but his eyes were alert. "I wanted to see how you were doing. Grandpa, Mom said you were confused yesterday." Harold scoffed, a sharp sound that rattled in his chest. "Your mother mistakes disagreement for dementia. It is a convenient diagnosis for her. If I agree with her, I am lucid. If I say no, I am confused." He gestured for me to sit. The kitchen was spotless, but I noticed the calendar on the wall was turned to the wrong month. It was a small detail, the kind Diane would use as evidence, but today it just looked like a man who didn't care what day it was because every day was the same battle. "Did you do it?" he asked. His voice dropped to a whisper. Though we were the only ones in the house, I nodded. "I went to North Alder yesterday. I deposited the check." Harold leaned forward, his hands clasping together on the tabletop. "And? Did they take it?" "They took it," I said. "It cleared instantly." "Grandpa." But the teller acted strange. She called someone, and then I got a call later asking if I was an authorized recipient. Harold exhales, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to deflate his shoulders. He closed his eyes for a moment, and I saw the tension leave his face. "Good," he said softly. "Good. That means the link is still active." "What link?" I asked. "Grandpa? What is going on?" "Mom says that money is fake. She said you are writing checks from an account that hasn't existed since the 90s. But the bank knew who you were." Harold opened his eyes. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small notepad. He wrote something down, tore off the page, and slid it across the table to me. It was a question. "Read the memo line you saw on the check." I looked at him, confused. "I don't need to write it down," it said. "For what you carried when no one thanked you." He nodded, tapping the table. "Say it again." Exact words. "For what you carried when no one thanked you." I repeated. Harold smiled. It was a grim, satisfied smile. "It is a code. Lucy, not a computer code, but a verified phrase. I set it up years ago. If the check came through with any other words, like birthday gift or groceries, the bank was instructed to flag it as coercion. They would have frozen the funds." My mouth fell open slightly. "You thought someone would force you to write a check?" "I know how people operate when they think no one is watching," he said. He stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, moving with a stiffness that spoke of arthritis, but not frailty. He opened the junk drawer next to the sink. Usually, this drawer was a graveyard for rubber bands and takeout menus. Today, I saw something else. Stacked neatly in the back were 3 checkbooks, identical to the one he had used for me. Next to them was a manila folder labeled Briar Glen Trust Notes in handwriting that wasn't his. It looked like Diane's. "I have been testing the perimeter," Harold said, his back to me. "For 2 years. Diane has handled my bills. She said it was easier. She said the online portals were too complicated for me. And she was right. At first, I was grieving your grandmother. I didn't want to look at numbers." He turned around, holding a checkbook. But then the statements stopped coming to the house. She said she switched them to paperless to save trees. I asked to see them, and she always had an excuse. The printer was broken. She forgot her password. The internet was down. I felt a chill. That is what she tells me when I ask about her renovation budget. I said, Harold nodded. 6 months ago. I made a mistake. He said. He used the word mistake with a heavy, loaded emphasis. I saw a letter in her car when she drove me to the eye doctor. It was from an insurance company I didn't recognize. I asked her about it. He paused, looking out the window at the gray morning. What happened? I asked. She pulled the car over, he said quietly. She got very angry. She told me that if I started interfering, the state would see I was incompetent and put me in a home. She said she was the only one keeping the wolves away. She said I should be grateful she was handling the mess I made. What mess? I asked. I don't know, Harold whispered. That is the thing. Lucy, I don't remember making a mess, but she was so convincing. She said I had unpaid taxes. She said I had debts. I believed her, until I found this checkbook in an old box in the basement. I wrote that check to you to see if I still had control over my own name. The check clearing wasn't a gift. It was a proof of life. I stood up, my heart pounding. We need to go to the bank. Grandpa, we need to print everything out. If she is stealing from you... The sound of the front door opening cut me off. Harold froze. His posture instantly shifted. He slumped his shoulders. He let his mouth hang slightly open. The transformation was terrifyingly instant. He went from a detective to a confused old man in the span of a heartbeat. Dad? Diane's voice echoed from the hallway. Dad, I brought you some soup. She walked into the kitchen, carrying a plastic container. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes narrowed instantly, scanning the table, looking for evidence. Harold had already slipped the notepad into his pocket, but the drawer was still slightly open. Lucy, she said, her voice tight. I didn't know you were coming by. You should have called. You know how easily he gets overstimulated. I'm just visiting. Mom, I said, trying to match her casual tone. We were just talking about the garden. Diane set the soup down on the counter with a thud. She walked over to Harold and placed a hand on his shoulder. It looked affectionate, but I saw her fingers dig into the fabric of his shirt. He looks tired, she said, speaking about him as if he weren't there. Look at his color. You are stressing him out. Lucy, he needs rest, not chatter. I am fine. Diane, Harold mumbled, his voice wavering perfectly. Just talking to Lucy. Diane sighed, a martyr's sigh. I know you like to visit, Dad, but Lucy has work. She has a busy life. We shouldn't keep her. She turned to me, her smile bright and hard. Why don't you head out? Honey, I need to get him settled for his nap. I looked at Harold. He gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Go. I'll see you later. Grandpa, I said. I grabbed my purse and walked to the door. I was halfway to my car when I heard the front door open behind me. Lucy, wait, I turned. Diane was standing on the porch, her arms crossed against the chill. She walked down the steps, closing the distance between us until she was uncomfortably close. We need to talk about that check, she said. I thought you said it was a prop. I said. Diane's face twitched. She looked around the empty street, checking for neighbors. Look, she said, her voice dropping. I didn't want to worry you yesterday. I tried to laugh it off because the truth is embarrassing. But if you are going to keep digging, you need to know. Know what? Harold is being targeted. She said, there are scammers, professional ones. They get hold of old account numbers and they mail these checkbooks to seniors. They trick them into thinking they have money, hoping they will deposit them and trigger a wire transfer. It is a very sophisticated scheme. I stared at her. That check cleared. Mom, it wasn't a scam. The money is in my account. For now, Diane said quickly. That is how they hook you. They float the funds, and then next week, they drain everything. You are being naive. Lucy, you think you are helping him, but you are walking right into a trap. She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was cold. I am trying to protect him, she said. You don't understand how fragile our situation is. If you mess with these accounts, if you trigger an audit, we could lose the house. We could lose everything. Our situation, not his situation. I pulled my arm away. If it is a scam, surely the bank knows. I said, I will let them handle it. Diane's eyes flashed with genuine panic. No, don't talk to the bank. They are bureaucratic idiots. They will freeze his assets while they investigate. And then how will we pay for his medication? How will we pay for his food? I will handle it. Mom, I said. I got in my car and shut the door before she could say anything else. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. She was standing in the middle of the driveway, watching me. She didn't look like a concerned daughter. She looked like a general who had just realized her flank was exposed. I didn't go back to work. I drove to a coffee shop on the edge of town and called North Alder Credit Union again. Thank you for calling North Alder. How may I direct your call? I need to speak to someone about the term authorized recipient, I said, and I want to know why a check cleared from a custodial reserve. There was a long pause on the other end. One moment, please. The hold music was classical, distorted by the phone line. I waited for 5 minutes. Finally, a man picked up. His voice was deeper, more authoritative than the member services representative from yesterday. This is Mr. Henderson in Risk Management. To whom am I speaking? Lucy Brooks, I said. Ms. Brooks, I see the notes on your file. Regarding the instrument processed yesterday, you have questions about the account status? I want to know what a custodial reserve is. I said, and why my mother seems terrified of it. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. I cannot discuss the specifics of another member's feelings. However, regarding the terminology, a custodial reserve is typically an account established to hold funds in trust, often subject to specific trigger events or legal stipulations. It is not a standard checking account. Trigger events? I asked. Mr. Henderson hesitated. Mrs. Brooks, if you wish to discuss the authorization on this account, you will need to come in person. We cannot disclose beneficial interest details over the phone. You should speak to our records department. Can I come now? I asked. He paused, checking a schedule. We have an opening at 2 o'clock. Please bring 2 forms of identification and the original note you mentioned to the teller. The original note? They wanted the paper trail. I hung up and called Marin. Marin Keller had been my best friend since college. She was a paralegal with a cynical streak a mile wide, and she was the only person who saw through my family's polite veneer. I met her on her lunch break, sitting on a park bench near her office. I told her everything. The check, the code, the duplicate checkbooks, Diane's panic about the fragile situation. Marin listened, eating a bagel with methodical bites. When I finished, she wiped crumbs from her lap and looked at me. She is gaslighting you, Marin said. I know, I said, but maybe she is right about the scam? Maybe she is trying to protect him from bad actors? Marin shook her head. Lucy, look at the behavior. A worried daughter says, let's go to the police together, a worried daughter says. Let's call the bank fraud department right now. She didn't say any of that. She told you to destroy the evidence. She told you not to talk to the bank. She called it a prop. I said, then she called it a scam. Exactly, Marin said. She is throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. First, you are stupid for believing it. Then, you are dangerous for touching it. The narrative shifts, but the goal is the same. Keep Lucy away from the money. She said we could lose the house, I added. Marin stopped chewing. Which house? Harold's bungalow? She just said, the house. Marin pulled out her phone and started tapping. That is interesting, because if Harold owns that bungalow outright, which I assume he does, the only way to lose it is unpaid taxes or a lien, and if Diane has been handling the bills... She let the sentence hang there. Go to that appointment, Marin said, and record the conversation if you can. Although, knowing banks, they won't let you. Just take notes, verbatim notes, at 2 o'clock. I walked into the North Alder Credit Union again. The atmosphere was different this time. I wasn't just a customer depositing a check. I was a problem that had been escalated. I was led to a back office with frosted glass walls. The nameplate on the door read E. Vane, Senior Records Specialist, Ms. Vane was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense bob. She didn't smile when I sat down. She simply opened a file on her desk. Ms. Brooks, she said, "May I see your identification?" I handed over my driver's license and my passport. She scrutinized them, then handed them back. And the note? I produced the scrap of notebook paper Harold had clipped to the check, for what you carried when no one thanked you. Ms. Vane read it. Her expression softened. Just a fraction. She placed it on the desk and smoothed it out. "This account," she began, choosing her words carefully, "is a sub-account of the Weller Trust. It was established 20 years ago. It is labeled H. Weller, Custodial Reserve. 20 years ago?" I said, "I would have been 13. Correct." Ms. Vane turned a document around so I could see it. It was a photocopy of a signature card, yellowed with age. There, at the bottom, was Harold's signature, stronger, bolder than it was now. And below it, in the section marked Successor Contact, was my name, printed in his handwriting. I never signed this. I said, "You didn't have to." Ms. Vane said, "A successor contact is for notification purposes. It means that if the primary account holder cannot be reached, or if there is suspicious activity that the primary holder cannot verify, the institution is authorized to contact you. But you didn't contact me." I said, "You called me yesterday, but nobody has contacted me for 20 years, because the account was dormant." Ms. Vane said, "Until yesterday." I looked at the document. Why did he make this? Ms. Vane closed the folder. "I cannot speculate on your grandfather's intent, but I can tell you that this account was set up to be entirely separate from his primary banking. It does not appear on his standard monthly statements. It does not link to his online profile, so my mother wouldn't see it." I realized aloud. Ms. Vane didn't confirm or deny. She just looked at me. Ms. Brooks, usually, when family members come in here asking about these types of accounts, they are looking for ways to access the funds. They bring lawyers. They bring power of attorney documents that look hasty. She leaned forward. "You are the first one who seems surprised that the money exists. I need to see the transaction history." I said, "I need to know if anyone else has tried to access it. I cannot give you copies without Mr. Weller present." "Miss," Vane said firmly, "he is the account holder. You are just a contact. Please." I said, "My mother says this is a scam. She is trying to make him rescind it." Ms. Vane stood up. That was a dismissal, but as she walked me to the door, she paused. "Ms. Brooks," she said, her voice very low, "you are not the first family member to ask questions about this account." I froze. "Who else?" "I cannot say. But I will say this. The attempt was made 3 years ago. They tried to merge this account with his general savings. We refused because the signature didn't match the control card. 3 years ago, around the time Diane started helping him, thank you, Ms. Vane, I said, I drove home, my mind racing. Diane knew. She had known for 3 years that there was a pot of money she couldn't touch, and it was driving her crazy. She wasn't protecting Harold from scammers. She was protecting her inheritance from Harold. At 7 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Harold. I picked it up on the first ring. "Grandpa, do not talk," he said. "Just listen. I am using the landline, but I don't trust it for long." I waited. "Meet me tomorrow morning at 9, he said. "There is a self-storage facility on Route 9. Cedar Hollow Storage. Unit 42. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there. Come alone. Lucy, do not tell your mother. Do not tell your aunt. If Diane asks, you are at work. I understand. And Lucy?" His voice trembled slightly. The first crack in his composure I had heard all day. "Yes? The story your mother tells. It depends on you never seeing what I saved. I kept it for you. All of it." The line clicked dead. I looked at the phone. Unit 42. I had thought this was about $20,000. I had thought it was about a check. But as I stared at the dark screen of my phone, I realized $20,000 was just the admission price. The real story was in a storage unit on Route 9. And tomorrow, I was going to learn exactly why my mother was so afraid of the truth. The drive to Cedar Hollow took 40 minutes. It was an area of the county that time seemed to have forgotten. A landscape of rusted chain-link fences, auto body shops, and overgrown lots filled with weeds that stood as high as a man's waist. The storage facility sat at the end of a gravel road. A long, low row of corrugated metal units painted appealing industrial blue. It was not the kind of place you went to store holiday decorations or extra patio furniture. It was the kind of place you went to hide things you never wanted found. I parked my car next to Harold's sedan. He was standing by Unit 42, looking out at the tree line. He wore a heavy wool coat and a flat cap, and against the backdrop of the gray morning sky, he looked like a character from a different era. A man waiting for a contact during the Cold War. I got out of the car. The air smelled of wet gravel and diesel. "You found it," Harold said. He didn't smile. "It is a bit out of the way." "Grandpa," I said, looking around, "I don't think I have ever been to this side of town." "That is the point," he said. "Diane does not come here. She does not like gravel. It ruins her heels." He turned to the padlock on the door. It was a heavy-duty model, the kind used for construction sites. He dialed in the combination with slow, deliberate movements, his hands shaking just slightly, not from age. I realized, but from adrenaline. He popped the shackle and slid the bolt back. "Help me with the door. Lucy, it sticks." I grabbed the handle at the bottom of the metal door. Together, we heaved it upward. The metal groaned, a loud, screeching protest that echoed off the empty units around us. Inside, the unit was small, perhaps 5 feet by 10. It was lit by a single, bare bulb that Harold activated by pulling a string. The space was dry and smelled of old paper and dust. There were no piles of furniture, no boxes of clothes. There was only a metal shelving unit against the back wall, holding 6 white banker's boxes, each labeled in thick black marker. Tax returns, property deeds, Briar Glen Trust, legal correspondence, and on a small folding table in the center of the unit sat a single, leather-bound ledger. I walked inside, feeling like I was stepping into a sanctuary or a bunker. "What is all this?" I asked. "Evidence," Harold said. He closed the door behind us until it was just a foot from the ground, leaving us in a semi-private twilight. He walked to the table and placed his hand on the ledger. "You asked why I gave you the check," he said. "You asked if it was real." I nodded. "It wasn't generosity." "Lucy," he said. His voice was hard, stripped of the grandfatherly warmth I was used to. "It was a temperature check." "A temperature check?" "I needed to know if the lines were still open." He said, "I needed to know if Diane had fully locked me down yet. If the check bounced, or if the bank called her instead of processing it, I would have known that she had power of attorney over everything. But it cleared. That means she missed one. It means I still have a voice, even if it is a quiet one." I stared at him. "You used $20,000 to test a theory?" "I used $20,000 to see if I was still a free man," he corrected. "And now I know. She has built a wall around me. Lucy. But there is a crack in it, and you just walked through it." He opened the ledger. The pages were filled with columns of numbers, dates, and notes, all written in his precise script. "Look here," he said, pointing to a column dated 3 years ago. I leaned in. The entry read, "Ridgway and Brine Legal. Consultation regarding transfer of deed. Denied." I frowned. "Who are Ridgway and Brine?" "They were your father's lawyers," Harold said. "Or, they were supposed to be. After your dad died, Diane told me that we needed to simplify the estate. She said the laws had changed, that it would be better if we consolidated the assets to avoid probate taxes later. She used words I didn't fully understand. But she said them with such confidence. She is my daughter. I trusted her. He flipped a page in the ledger. She brought me papers to sign. He continued. Late at night, usually, or right before I had to leave for a doctor's appointment, she would say, "Oh, Dad, just sign this. It is just an address update for the insurance," or "This is just to authorize me to pick up your prescriptions." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "And you signed them?" "I signed them," Harold said quietly. "I was grieving. Lucy, I lost my son-in-law. I was watching my daughter fall apart. I wanted to make it easier for her. I thought I was helping." He reached into one of the boxes labeled Legal Correspondence and pulled out a folded letter. He handed it to me. "Read this," he said. I unfolded the paper. It was on thick, cream-colored stationery. The letterhead read, "Ridgway and Brine Legal," dated 4 years ago. The subject line was, Family Residence Transfer and Competency Evaluation. I scanned the text. My eyes snagged on a paragraph in the middle, regarding the request to transfer the title of the property at 44 Elm Street to Diane Brooks. We must advise that such a transfer, given the client's advanced age and lack of independent counsel, raises significant concerns regarding undue influence. We recommend an independent competency hearing before proceeding. Undue influence, I whispered. That is legal speak for manipulation. Harold nodded. I never saw that letter. Lucy, I found it in the bottom of her recycling bin a week later. She had shredded the top half. But she missed the bottom. She never told me she tried to transfer the house to her name. She told me the lawyers were just handling the will. I looked up at him. She tried to take the house? She tried. He said, and when they pushed back, she fired them. She told me they were overcharging us and that she found a new advisor, a family friend. Who? I don't know. Harold said, she won't tell me his name. She says he prefers privacy. But after that, the statements stopped coming. He walked over to another box and pulled out a stack of photocopies. These were copies of checks, grainy and black and white. I started keeping my own records when I realized things were missing. Harold said I would go to the bank in person, once a month, and ask for printouts of the last 30 days. I told them I lost my statements. Diane doesn't know I do this. He spread the photocopies out on the table. Look at the payees, he said. I looked. There were checks for the electric bill, the water bill, the grocery store. But every month, like clockwork, there was a check made out to Silver Thread Home Support. The amounts were never large. $300, $450, $280. Silver Thread. Home Support? I asked. Is that a cleaning service? Harold shook his head. I have never hired a cleaning service. I scrub my own floors. Lucy, you know that. Maybe it is for the yard work? I suggested, grasping for a logical explanation. I mow my own lawn. Harold said firmly, and in the winter, the neighbor boy shovels the drive for $20 cash. I have never heard of Silver Thread Home Support, but for the last 2 years, they have been taking $400 to $500 a month out of my primary checking account. I did the math in my head. $500 a month, $6,000 a year, over 3 years. That was nearly $20,000. It is a siphon, I said. My voice sounded hollow in the metal room. It is small enough that the bank algorithms wouldn't flag it as suspicious activity, especially if the amounts vary slightly. Exactly, Harold said. It is designed not to trigger alarms. It is just a leak. A slow, steady leak draining everything I have. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I asked Diane about it once. I asked her what Silver Thread was. She told me I must have forgotten, that they were the ones who came to clean the gutters and check the furnace. She looked at me with such pity. Lucy, she said, oh, Dad, don't you remember? They were here last week. He gripped the edge of the table. For a minute, I believed her. I thought, maybe I am losing it. Maybe I did forget. But then I checked my calendar. Nobody came last week. I was home all day. I felt a surge of rage so hot it made my vision blur. This wasn't just theft. This was psychological warfare. She was making him doubt his own reality to cover her tracks. We have to go to the police. Grandpa, I said, this is fraud. No, Harold snapped. No police. Not yet. Why not? She is stealing from you. Because she has the medical paperwork, Harold said. He gestured to the boxes. Somewhere in the paperwork I signed, there is a medical proxy. If I call the police on her, she will claim I am paranoid. She will use the dementia defense. She will say I am a danger to myself and she will have me committed. She has threatened it before. Lucy. She calls it assisted living. But the way she says it sounds like a prison sentence. The sound of gravel crunching outside made us both freeze. It was the slow, heavy crunch of tires rolling to a stop. Harold's eyes went wide. Did you lock the gate? I don't know. I stammered. I thought it locked automatically. We stood in silence, listening. A car door slammed, then the sound of heels clicking on the pavement. Click, 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 fast. Angry steps. She found us. Harold whispered. He looked suddenly frail again. She tracks my phone. I forgot to turn it off. The roll-up door rattled as someone grabbed the handle from the outside. I stepped in front of Harold, instinctively. The door flew up with a crash that shook the walls. Diane stood there, silhouetted against the gray light. She was wearing a beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses, looking like a movie star who had taken a wrong turn into a nightmare. Her chest was heaving. She ripped the sunglasses off. Her eyes were not the eyes of a concerned daughter. They were the eyes of a cornered animal. I knew it, she hissed. She stepped into the unit, her gaze darting from me to Harold, and then to the table covered in papers. I knew you were up to something, she said, her voice trembling with rage. I tracked the car. Dad, did you forget that? I saw you go to the bank yesterday. Lucy, I saw the alert on the joint account, and now here you are, huddled in a storage unit like criminals. She walked straight toward the table. What is this? She grabbed the ledger. What are these lies? Put it down. Mom, I said, stepping forward. She spun on me. Do not tell me what to do. Lucy, you have no idea what you are involved in. You are turning him against his own family. You are poisoning him. I am turning him against family? I pointed to the photocopies of the checks. Who is Silver Thread? Mom? Who is getting $500 a month for services Grandpa never received? Diane didn't even look at the papers. She swept her arm across the table, knocking the stack of photocopies onto the dusty floor. It is none of your business, she screamed. You think you are so smart. Coming in here with your self-righteous attitude. You haven't been here. Lucy, you were off living your life, playing career woman, while I was the one driving him to appointments. I was the one managing the chaos. Managing the chaos or managing the theft, I shot back. Diane lunged for the box labeled Briar Glen Trust. That is mine, she yelled. That is private family business. She grabbed the box, her fingernails digging into the cardboard. Harold stepped forward. He put his hand on the box, covering hers. Let go. Diane, he said. His voice was not loud, but it was different. It wasn't the voice of the confused old man she mocked at dinner. It was the voice of a father who was done being patient. Diane froze. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. Dad, let go, she warned, her voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You are confused. You don't know what you are doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Harold said, I am keeping my records, and you are trespassing. Diane yanked the box, trying to tear it from his grip. Harold stumbled, but he didn't let go. I stepped in and grabbed Diane's wrist. Stop it, I yelled. You are hurting him. Diane released the box and shoved me backward. I stumbled against the metal wall, the corrugated steel biting into my shoulder. Diane stood in the center of the unit, breathing hard. Her hair was slightly messed, her perfect facade cracked wide open. She looked at the two of us. The united front. You ungrateful old man. She spat at Harold. After everything I sacrificed, I gave up my career for you. I gave up my freedom to make sure you were taken care of. You gave up nothing, Harold said, his voice rising. You took, and you took. I am owed. Diane screamed. The sound was shocking in the small space. I am owed that money. It is my inheritance. Why should it sit in an account while I struggle to keep this family afloat? Why should you hoard it like a dragon while I am drowning? So it is about the money, I said quietly. You admit it. Diane turned her cold gaze on me. Her mask slipped completely then. There was no more pretense of caregiving, no more feigned concern for his health. There was only greed and resentment, naked and ugly. That money isn't yours to touch. Lucy, she said. Her voice was ice. It was never meant for you. You were never part of the plan. You were supposed to stay away. She smoothed her coat, regaining a terrifying semblance of composure. This isn't over, she said. You think a few papers change anything? I have the power of attorney. I have the medical history. I can have you declared incompetent by Monday morning. Dad, remember that. She turned on her heel and walked out. We stood in silence as her car door slammed and her engine roared to life. We listened as the tires crunched away down the gravel road. Fading into silence, Harold sank onto a plastic folding chair I hadn't noticed before. He looked 10 years older than he had 10 minutes ago. He was trembling. Are you okay? I asked, rushing to his side. He nodded, but his eyes were wet. She thinks she owns me, he whispered. She thinks I'm just another asset to be liquidated. I looked at the mess on the floor. The scattered checks, the ledger. We need to secure this. I said, we can't leave it here. She knows where it is now. No, Harold said. She won't come back here. She is too afraid of getting her hands dirty. She will fight us in the courts now. She will fight us with paper. He looked up at me. Lucy, you need to take pictures. Take pictures of everything. The ledger, the checks, the letter from the lawyers. Use your phone. I spent the next 20 minutes photographing every document in the unit. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to focus. I took close-ups of signatures, dates, and the strange, varying amounts paid to Silver Thread. When I was done, Harold took my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. Promise me something. Lucy, he said. Anything, Grandpa. If anything happens to me, he said, if I end up in the hospital, if I suddenly become confused and can't speak for myself, if I disappear into one of those homes she talks about, I won't let that happen. I said, you might not be able to stop it, he said grimly. She is very good at what she does. If that happens, you must go directly to North Alder Credit Union. Do not call. Go in person. Okay. And you must ask for the custodial reserve release packet, he said. Say those exact words. Custodial reserve release packet. I repeated, yes, Harold said. It is a failsafe. I set it up years ago, just in case. It contains the original deed to the house, the unredacted will, and a statement I wrote when I was fully sound of mind, detailing exactly what I feared might happen if you request that packet. It triggers a legal freeze on all my other assets. It stops her dead in her tracks. I squeezed his hand. I promise. We locked the unit back up. The heavy click of the padlock felt final. I followed Harold home to make sure he got inside safely. I wanted to stay, but he insisted I leave. If you stay, she will say you are holding me hostage. He said, go, do the work. I drove straight to Marin's office. I didn't even call first. Marin was in the middle of a conference call, but one look at my face and she hung up. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. The storage unit, the Silver Thread checks, the confrontation, Diane's threat. Marin listened, her face growing paler by the minute. When I got to the part about Silver Thread home support, she spun her chair around to her computer. Spell it, she said. SILVERTHREAD. I said. She typed furiously. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Okay, let's see who these people are, she muttered. She pulled up the state business registry. Here it is, she said. Silver Thread Home Support, LLC, registered 3 years ago. Status, active. Who owns it? I asked. She clicked a link. Registered agent, a company called Fast Filings Incorporated. That is a generic service. It hides the real owner. Can we find the address? Principal office address. Marin read, 1200 Corporate Drive, Suite B4. She opened a new tab and typed in the address. A map popped up. She switched to Street View. It wasn't an office building. It was a strip mall. Next to a dry cleaner and a vape shop was a door marked The Hub. Co-working and mail services. It is a drop box, Marin said, leaning back. It is a shell. Lucy, there is no office. There are no caregivers. It is just a mailing address where someone goes to pick up checks, or where the checks get auto-forwarded. I said, exactly. Marin turned back to me. Diane isn't just skimming off the top. She created a fake vendor to invoice her own father. That is wire fraud. That is embezzlement. We have her. I said, we can go to the police now. Marin hesitated. We can, she said. But remember what Harold said about the medical proxy. If you go to the cops, Diane will play the concerned guardian card. She will say Harold hired this company in his confusion, and she is just paying the bills he approved. Without proof that she is the one behind the LLC, it is still murky. So what do? We need to find the link between Diane and Silver Thread. Marin said, and we need to protect Harold legally before she tries to declare him incompetent. She picked up a sticky note and wrote down a name. Pinecrest Senior Advocacy, she said. Who are they? They are elder law pit bulls, Marin said. They aren't just lawyers. They are social workers and advocates. They specialize in financial exploitation cases. They know how to navigate the gray areas where family and fraud overlap. I took the sticky note. Call them, Marin said. Book a meeting. Tell them you don't want to attack your mother. Tell them you want to do a benefits review for your grandfather. Get them in the room. Once they see the documents, they will do the rest. I nodded. I felt a strange calm settling over me. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard determination. Diane had told me the money wasn't mine to touch. She was right. It wasn't mine. It was evidence, and I was about to use it to burn her house of cards to the ground. I went back to my car and dialed the number on the note. Pinecrest Senior Advocacy. This is Sarah. Hi, I said. My name is Lucy Brooks. I need to schedule an urgent consultation regarding my grandfather. I believe he is being financially exploited by a family member, and I have the paper trail to prove it. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Sarah asked. I will be there, I said. I hung up and looked at the photo on my phone. The picture of the check made out to Silver Thread. It was never meant for you, Diane had said. She had no idea. It was exactly what I needed. The office of Pinecrest Senior Advocacy smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner, a scent that somehow underscored the seriousness of why we were there. I sat next to Harold on a beige love seat that had seen better days. Across from us sat Elena Rosario, a senior advocate with kind eyes and a demeanor that suggested she had heard every version of family betrayal there was. She did not use the word theft. She did not use the word fraud. She spoke in a calm, professional code that validated everything without triggering the legal alarms that might scare Harold away. We often see patterns of overmanagement, Elena said, folding her hands over a file folder. It starts as assistance. A daughter helps with grocery shopping. Then she helps with writing checks because handwriting becomes difficult. Then she takes over the bill, paying entirely to ensure nothing is missed. It is a slippery slope. Mr. Weller, the line between assistance and control is often crossed in the name of convenience. Harold nodded slowly. He was clutching his hat in his lap. She told me I was making mistakes, he said. She told me the math was too hard for me, and perhaps she believed that. Elena said gently, but the result is that you have lost visibility into your own assets, and that is not acceptable. You are competent. Mr. Weller, you have the right to make your own mistakes. And you certainly have the right to know where your money is going. She helped us build a fortress of paperwork. We filled out forms to change his mailing address to a secure post office box that only Harold and I had keys to. We drafted a document designating me as his primary contact for all financial institutions, explicitly revoking any previous verbal or written permissions granted to Diane. It felt like we were preparing for a siege, When we left, Harold looked lighter. He took a deep breath of the cool air. She listened to me. He said, "She didn't talk over me. She knows the law." "Grandpa," I said, "and now? So do we." Our next stop was North Alder Credit Union. This was the hard part. We had the strategy. Now we needed the confrontation. We met with Mr. Henderson again, but this time I insisted on a witness. I brought Marin, who sat in the corner with a notepad, looking like a court stenographer ready to indict the whole room. Mr. Henderson looked nervous. He had the file on his desk, and his eyes kept darting to Marin. "Mr. Weller," he began, "we have reviewed the transaction history for the custodial reserve. You mentioned that you did not authorize the transfers to the main checking account?" "I did not," Harold said firmly. Mr. Henderson slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a funds transfer authorization form, dated 4 years ago. "This is the document we have on file." "Mr. Henderson said, "It authorizes Diane Brooks to initiate transfers between your accounts for maintenance and care purposes." Harold stared at the paper. I watched his face. He squinted at the signature at the bottom. It read, "Harold J. Weller." It was looped and slanted, just like his. I leaned in. "That looks like your signature." "Grandpa?" Harold didn't blink. He ran his finger over the ink on the photocopy. "It looks like it," he said softly. "But look at the J." I looked. The J in his middle initial had a sharp hook at the bottom. "I have not made a hook like that since I broke my wrist in 1998, Harold said. He looked up at Mr. Henderson. "Since then, my J has been a straight line. I cannot bend my wrist that way anymore." The room went silent. Mr. Henderson pulled the paper back. He didn't argue. He didn't defend the bank's verification process. He simply looked down at his desk. "We see this sometimes," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Family members, they practice. Liability, that was the ghost in the room. If the bank admitted they had accepted a forged document, they were on the hook for every cent Diane had siphoned. "I am not accusing the institution of malice," I said, channeling Marin's legal tone. "But my grandfather is formally stating that this authorization is invalid. We want it revoked immediately, and we want an internal review of every transfer made under this authority." Mr. Henderson nodded quickly. "Of course, we will flag the account. We will initiate a review. But Miss Brooks," he hesitated, looking at Harold, then at me, "please understand that without a police report, our hands are tied regarding the recovery of past funds. We can stop future transfers, but we cannot reverse 4 years of activity based on a disputed signature alone." "I understand," I said. "Just stop the bleeding." As we walked out, I saw the tellers watching us. They weren't gossiping. They looked sad. They had seen this movie before, and they knew how it usually ended. Diane did not take the loss of control quietly. She didn't scream at me in the street again. She went for the jugular in the only way that truly matters in our family. She went for my reputation. 2 days after the bank meeting, my phone started buzzing with texts from my cousins. "Hey, Lucy. Just heard about the loan you asked Grandpa for. Hope you are okay. Lucy, Mom said you are in some kind of trouble with debt. Is that why you are stressing Grandpa out?" Then came the call from Aunt Sarah, Diane's younger sister. She lived 3 states away and usually only called on Christmas. "Lucy," she said, her voice dripping with disappointed concern, "your mother is worried sick. She says you are practically harassing Harold for money. She says you have him running around town, signing papers he doesn't understand. Because you need cash." I gripped the phone. "That is a lie." "Aunt Sarah, is it?" Sarah asked. "Diane said she saw the check." "Lucy, $20,000? That is a lot of money to take from an old man who can barely remember what he had for breakfast. He isn't confused." "Sarah," I said, my voice shaking, "and I didn't take the money. I deposited it to protect it. To protect it from who? His own daughter?" Sarah sighed. "Look, we all know you have always been the independent one, but don't take advantage of him. It is beneath you." She hung up before I could explain about silver thread, before I could explain about the forged signature. I sat in my kitchen, feeling the old shame rising up like bile, the shame of being the outsider, the shame of being the one who didn't fit the perfect family portrait. Diane knew exactly where to hit. She knew that if she painted me as the desperate, greedy granddaughter, nobody would believe me when I showed them the ledger. They would just see a thief trying to justify her crime. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call every single one of them and scream the truth. But I didn't. I remembered the advocate's words. Patterns of exploitation rely on isolation and emotional volatility. If I reacted emotionally, I proved Diane right. I put the phone down. I opened my laptop. I logged into the new secure portal we had set up for Harold. I checked the balance. It was safe. Focus on the facts. I whispered to myself, let them talk. The paper doesn't lie. The next day, the war arrived in my mailbox. It was a large, stiff envelope sent via certified mail. The return address was Silver Thread Home Support, LLC. My hands trembled as I signed for it. This was it, the legal hammer. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed on cheap printer stock. The logo at the top looked like clip art. A pixelated image of two hands clasping. To Ms. Lucy Brooks, it has come to our attention that you have been interfering with the contracted care services provided to Mr. Harold Weller. Your actions in canceling scheduled visits and blocking payment channels constitute a breach of the verbal service agreement established with the client's primary caregiver, Diane Brooks. We demand that you cease and desist all interference immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal action to recover lost revenue and damages to our reputation. Sincerely, Management. I read it twice. Then I laughed. It was sloppy. There was no attorney named, no specific statute cited, verbal service agreement. That was the tell. There was no contract. There was no paper trail because a real company would have sent an invoice. Not a threat. They were scared. I took a picture of the letter and sent it to Marin. Got a love letter from the ghost company. I texted. Marin replied instantly. Classic intimidation. They are trying to scare you off. Don't respond. Save it. I drove to Harold's house that evening. I needed to show him the letter, to prove that we were rattling their cage. When I arrived, Harold was sitting in his living room, looking at an old photo album. The television was off. The house was quiet. He looked up as I came in. He didn't ask about the bank. He didn't ask about Diane. Sit down. Lucy, he said. I sat on the ottoman across from him. He tapped the photo album. It was open to a picture of me at 18. I was wearing my high school graduation gown, smiling, but my eyes looked tired. That was the summer my father got sick. That was the summer I turned down my acceptance to the state university because we couldn't afford the tuition and the medical bills at the same time. Diane always told the family I chose to take a gap year. She said I wasn't ready for college. She said I wanted to stay home. I never corrected her. It was easier to let her have her pride. Do you know why I opened that reserve account? Harold asked. I thought it was for emergencies. I said, no. He said, he looked at the picture of me. When you stayed home that year, when you spent your days driving your father to chemotherapy and your nights doing laundry, I watched you. I watched you give up your start so your mother wouldn't drown. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. Diane never thanked you. She told everyone you were finding yourself, but I knew. I knew you were carrying the weight of this family on your back. I felt tears prick my eyes. It is okay, Grandpa. I didn't mind. I minded, Harold said. I minded very much. That year, I received a settlement, a small workplace injury claim from years prior that finally paid out. It was $40,000. He closed the album. I didn't tell Diane. If I had told her, she would have found a reason to spend it. A new roof, a better car for the appointments. She eats money. Lucy, she doesn't mean to. Perhaps, but she devours it, so I put half of it in the reserve. He said, for you, I wanted to give it to you when you finally went back to school, but then things got complicated. Diane started asking questions. I got scared she would find it. So I hid it. I buried it under layers of paperwork, hoping that one day, when you were ready, I could give it to you and say, "Thank you." He pointed to the ledger I had brought in with me. "That money isn't just cash. Lucy, it is my apology. I should have protected you then. I should have told Diane to hire a nurse and let you go to school. But I was weak." I reached out and took his hand. "You are not weak, Grandpa. You saved it. You saved me." He squeezed my hand. "We have to finish this, Lucy, because there is something else." He reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a folded document. It looked old, the paper soft and worn at the creases. "I found this in the Briar Glen box." He said, "I think you missed it when you were taking photos." I unfolded it. It was a property deed, but not for the house in Maple Barrow. It was for a property in Ashford Hollow, Lot 4B, lakefront. "I know this place." I said, "We used to go there for picnics when I was little." "The cabin. It is just a shack, really." Harold said, "No electricity, no running water. But the land. The land has value now. The developers have been circling Ashford Hollow for years." I scanned the document. My eyes stopped on a paragraph near the bottom. "In the event of the incapacity or death of Harold J. Weller, ownership of said property shall transfer immediately to Diane Brooks, pending no other beneficiary is named. Incapacity." I read aloud. "That is the key," Harold said. "The house here in town is in the trust. She can't sell it easily, but the cabin? If she can prove I am incompetent, if she can get a doctor to sign a paper saying I am no longer capable of managing my affairs, the cabin becomes hers instantly." I looked at him. "That is why she wants you diagnosed. She wants the land," Harold said. "She wants to sell it to the developers. She's been talking about liquidating assets for years. She sees that cabin as a lottery ticket." I felt a chill. It wasn't just about the $500 a month. That was just petty cash. The real prize was the land, and to get it, she needed to erase him. She needed him to be a non-person. I pulled out my phone. "I need to call Marin." I met Marin an hour later at a diner halfway between my apartment and her office. I showed her the deed. I showed her the threat letter from Silver Thread. Marin looked at the documents, stirring her coffee aggressively. "This is a coordinated strike," she said. "She is siphoning cash to fund her lifestyle while she waits for the big payout, and the big payout triggers the moment he loses his agency." "But who is helping her?" I asked. "Diane isn't sophisticated enough to set up an LLC and draft fake legal threats. She can barely use Excel." Marin pulled out her laptop. "I did some digging on the husband," she said. "Gavin?" I asked. "My stepfather. He was a quiet man, a failed real estate agent who spent most of his time playing golf and agreeing with Diane." Marin turned the screen toward me. "Meet Gavin Miller, former officer of Silver Strand Properties. Dissolved in 2010. Silver Strand." I whispered. "Silver Thread." "It gets better," Marin said. "Look at the registered address for Silver Strand." It was the same address as the Silver Thread drop box. The same suite number. "He is recycling his old shell companies." Marin said, "Gavin is the architect. Diane is the face. He sets up the structures, and she executes the emotional manipulation. They are a team. Lucy, a predatory team." I felt sick. Gavin had sat at our Thanksgiving table. He had carved the turkey. He had asked me how work was, and all the while, he was drafting invoices to steal from an 80-year-old man. "We have to stop them." I said, "We need to cut the head off the snake." Marin said, "You need to confront Diane. But not about the checks. You need to confront her about the endgame. You need to let her know that you know about the cabin." I drove to Diane's house the next morning. I didn't call. I just showed up. Gavin's car was in the driveway. Good. I wanted him there. I rang the doorbell. Diane answered. She looked tired. Her eyes were puffy. When she saw me, her expression hardened into a mask of tragic disappointment. "I don't have time for this. Lucy," she said, starting to close the door. "I know about the cabin." "Mom," I said, She stopped. The door hovered an inch from the frame. I know about Ashford Hollow. I continued. And I know about the incapacity clause. And I know that Gavin is the registered agent for Silver Thread Home Support. She opened the door slowly. Her face was pale. Come inside, she said. I walked into the living room. Gavin was sitting on the sofa, watching golf. He looked up, his face blank. She knows. Diane said to him. Gavin muted the TV. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed. What do you want? Lucy? He asked. I remained standing. I wanted to stop. All of it. The fake invoices, the gaslighting, the smear campaign with the aunts. Diane let out a bitter laugh. You think you can just walk in here and make demands? You are a child. I am the only thing standing between you and a felony fraud charge. I said calmly, I have the ledger. I have the bank records. I have the link between Gavin and the LLC. If I take this to the district attorney, you both go to jail. Gavin stood up. He was a tall man, imposing. You wouldn't do that to your mother. Try me, I said. I didn't flinch. I am offering you an exit, I said, looking at Diane. Cancel the services. Step away from Grandpa's finances completely. Sign a document acknowledging that you have no claim to the cabin. Do that, and I keep the police out of it. I won't tell the family the details. You can keep your reputation. Diane stared at me. Her hands were clenched at her sides. You ungrateful little brat, she whispered. She took a step toward me. It is family money, she screamed. It belongs to us. Harold doesn't need it. He is old. He is dying. We are the ones who are living. We are the ones with mortgages and debts. You are stealing from him, I yelled back. I am taking my share. Diane shrieked. I took care of him. I took care of you. I deserve it. She was shaking. The mask was gone. This was the raw truth. She didn't see it as theft. She saw it as reimbursement. She believed, truly believed, that she was the victim here. I looked at Gavin. He wasn't screaming. He was calculating. He knew I had them. Take the deal, Gavin said softly to Diane. No. Diane turned on him. No, I will not let her win. She is nothing. She is just a prop I used to make myself look like a good mother. The words hung in the air. I felt a coldness settle in my chest, a final, severing snap. I turned to the door. You have 24 hours to sign the papers, I said, or I go to the authorities. I walked out. I didn't look back. I drove straight to Harold's. He was waiting for me on the porch. Did you do it? He asked. I did. I said, they won't stop. Grandpa? She believes she is right. She thinks the money is hers by divine right. Harold nodded. He looked out at the street. Then we have to do the one thing I was afraid to do, he said. What is that? I have to rewrite the will, he said. I have to disinherit her. Explicitly, if I don't, she will fight you in probate for 10 years. I have to make it clear that she gets nothing. But if you do that, I started. If I do that, the war goes hot, he said. She will have nothing left to lose. She will come for me. Lucy, she will try to physically remove me from this house. Let her try. I said, I will be here. Harold looked at me. His eyes were clear, blue, and terrified. It isn't about the money anymore, is it? He asked. No, I said. It hasn't been about the money for a long time. It is about who gets to say who I am. Harold said, she wants to define me as a ghost. I need to prove I'm still a man. He stood up. Call the lawyer. Call Pinecrest. We do it tomorrow. I pulled out my phone. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. The battle lines were drawn. There was no going back. We were going to change reality, or we were going to be destroyed by it. The office of Ridgway and Brine Legal was a study in intimidation. The walls were lined with mahogany bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes that looked like they had not been opened in 50 years. The air smelled of furniture wax and billable hours. It was the kind of place my mother, Diane, would have loved to control, which made it the perfect place to dismantle her authority. We were sitting across from Mr. Ridgway, the senior partner. He was a man with eyebrows so thick they looked like they had their own zip code. He had been my father's lawyer, and he remembered Harold. When we explained that Diane had fired the firm 4 years ago, his expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "She told me you were overcharging us," Harold said, his hands folded on the polished table. "She said you were taking advantage of a widow." Mr. Ridgway adjusted his spectacles. "On the contrary, Mr. Weller, we expressed concern regarding certain restructuring requests Mrs. Brooks was making. Shortly after we requested a competency interview with you to confirm your understanding of those requests, we received a termination letter signed by you." "I didn't sign that," Harold said firmly. "I suspect you did not." "Mr. Ridgway said, for the next 2 hours, we rebuilt Harold's legal existence brick by brick. We revoked the previous power of attorney. We drafted a new durable power of attorney naming me, Lucy Brooks, as the sole agent. We updated the healthcare proxy, but the most important part was the specific language Harold insisted on. "I want a clause regarding isolation," Harold said. He leaned forward, his voice trembling slightly. "If I am moved from my home at 44 Elm Street for any reason, medical, emergency, or otherwise, my granddaughter must be notified in writing 48 hours in advance. If she is not notified, the move is to be considered an act of abduction." Mr. Ridgway paused, his pen hovering over the legal pad. "That is very strong language." "Harold, abduction? Write it down," Harold said. "She will try to move me. She will say it is for my safety. She will say the stairs are too much, or the neighborhood is changing. She wants me in a facility where she controls the visitor log. I want it on paper that moving me against my will is a crime. It is done," Mr. Ridgway said. We left the office feeling armored, but armor is heavy, and wearing it meant we were expecting a war. We did not have to wait long. 2 days later, on a Thursday morning, I received a call from Harold. "She is here," he whispered. "Who?" "Diane. And she brought a doctor." I was at work, but I grabbed my keys and ran. I broke 3 traffic laws getting to Elm Street. When I pulled up, Diane's SUV was in the driveway. Parked aggressively close to the front steps, I burst through the front door. In the living room, Harold was sitting in his armchair, looking like a cornered animal. Diane was standing over him, her arms crossed. Sitting on the sofa was a man in a white coat holding a clipboard. "Lucy," Diane said, not turning around. "You are interrupting a medical appointment." I walked straight to Harold's side. "Who is this?" I asked. "I am Dr. Embarrass," the man said. He looked tired and slightly bored. "Mrs. Brooks scheduled a cognitive wellness assessment. She expressed concern that her father has been exhibiting erratic behavior and aggression." "I am not aggressive," Harold said. His voice was tight. "I just told her to leave my house." Diane turned to the doctor, her face a mask of sorrow. "See, this is what I mean. He becomes hostile when we try to help. And his granddaughter, well, she encourages it. She is feeding his paranoia." She looked at me then, and her eyes were cold. "Lucy, honey, maybe you should wait in the kitchen. You look manic. You are sweating." "Dr. Embarrass, Lucy has been under a lot of financial stress lately. I think she's projecting her anxiety onto Dad. It was a masterclass in framing. In 3 sentences, she had painted Harold as senile and me as unstable. If I yelled, I proved her right. If I physically removed her, I was violent. I took a deep breath. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder. I did not look at Diane. I looked at the doctor. "Dr. Embarrass," I said calmly. "My name is Lucy Brooks. I am Mr. Weller's legal healthcare proxy as of Tuesday." I handed him a copy of the document we had signed at Ridgway and Brine. This assessment was not authorized by the patient or his proxy. I continued, "Furthermore, if you proceed with this exam under duress, I will file a complaint with the State Medical Board for practicing without consent." Dr. Embarrass looked at the document. He looked at the date. Then he looked at Diane. "You told me you were the guardian," he said to her. "I am," Diane snapped. "I have been handling his care for 4 years. That paper is something she coerced him into signing. She is manipulating him to get at his money. I pulled another paper from the folder. It was a photocopy of the Silver Thread home support invoices, highlighting the $500 a month going to a shell company. Dr. Aris, I said, we are currently documenting a case of financial exploitation involving a fake caregiving service. My mother is currently under investigation by the North Alder Credit Union for forgery. Her attempt to declare my grandfather incompetent today is a direct response to us cutting off her access to his funds. The room went dead silent. Diane's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mottled, violent purple. You little liar, she hissed. Doctor. Aris stood up. He closed his clipboard. Mrs. Brooks, he said, his voice icy. I think we are done here. I do not get involved in family legal disputes. Do not call my office again. He walked out. The front door clicked shut. Diane stood there, vibrating with rage. She looked at the papers in my hand. She looked at Harold, who was sitting up straighter now, his dignity returning. You think you are so clever, she whispered. You think a few papers make you safe? Get out. Mom, I said. She laughed. It was a jagged, broken sound. You are going to regret this. Lucy, you are destroying this family over $20,000. It is not about the money. Harold said. Diane ignored him. She grabbed her purse. Just wait, she said. Just wait until the rest of the family hears what you are doing to him. You will be a pariah. She stormed out. I sank onto the sofa. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the folder. You did good, Harold said softly. You beat her. I didn't beat her. Grandpa, I said, looking at the door. I just embarrassed her. And that is dangerous. The next battlefield was the credit union. Mr. Henderson called me on Friday. The internal review is complete, he said. We need Mr. Weller to come in to sign the final revocation documents, and Mrs. Brooks. We found things. We arrived at North Alder at 10 in the morning. The branch was busy. We were ushered into the manager's office, a glass-walled fishbowl near the vault. Mr. Henderson had a stack of papers on his desk. He looked grave. We audited the last 4 years of activity. He said, the signature on the authorization card does not match the control card. The variance is significant. Furthermore, we traced the IP address used to change the statement delivery settings from mail to digital. The IP address resolves to a residential internet account registered to a Gavin Miller. Harold nodded grimly. My son-in-law. Additionally, Mr. Henderson said, we found a pattern of transfers that suggests structuring. Small amounts, just under the reporting threshold, moved consistently to the Silver Thread entity. So it is fraud, I said. The bank is not a court of law. Mr. Henderson said carefully, but it is a violation of our member agreement. We are recommending an immediate and total revocation of all third-party access. We also recommend closing this account and opening a new one with a new number to prevent any ACH drafts from pulling through. Do it, Harold said. Mr. Henderson slid a form across the desk. Sign here to remove Diane Brooks and Gavin Miller from all accounts. Harold picked up the pen. He didn't hesitate. He wrote his name, Harold J. Weller, with the flat line J. As he set the pen down, the door to the office flew open. I didn't hear you come in, Mr. Henderson said. Standing up, Diane was standing in the doorway. She was wearing sunglasses and a scarf. But she wasn't hiding. She was seething. Behind her, a teller looked terrified. You can't do this, Diane said. She didn't shout. Her voice was a low, dangerous frequency. Ma'am, you are not authorized to be in this office, Mr. Henderson said. I am a signatory on this account, Diane said, slamming her hand on the glass doorframe. I have rights. You are letting this senile old man and this manipulative girl steal my inheritance. Harold stood up. He wasn't tall, but in that moment, he looked like a giant. It is not your inheritance. Diane, he said, it is my money, and I am not dead yet. Diane stepped into the room. She ignored Henderson. She loomed over Harold. "You are confused. Dad," she said, "you don't know what you are signing. They are tricking you. Come with me. We will go home. I made lunch." She reached for his arm. It was a reflex, a gesture of ownership she had used 1,000 times. "Do not touch him," I said. Diane spun on me. "Shut up. Lucy, you are nothing. You are a failed artist who came back to town to leech off him. Ma'am, Mr. Henderson shouted. He pressed a button under his desk. 2 security guards appeared at the door within seconds. "Please escort Ms. Brooks from the premises," Mr. Henderson said. "She is disturbing the peace." Diane looked at the guards. Then she looked at the paperwork on the desk, the revocation form with the ink still wet. "You are making a mistake," she said to the room at large. "He is incompetent. I have the medical records. The revocation is signed." "Miss Brooks," Mr. Henderson said, "you have no authority here. If you do not leave, we will call the police and file a trespassing charge." Diane looked at the authority she usually wielded. Her voice, her anger, her social standing, in this room, surrounded by policy manuals and federal regulations. It meant nothing. She turned and walked out. The silence she left behind was ringing. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a week. Mr. Henderson looked at us. "I apologize for the disturbance. We will expedite the account closure." As we walked to the car, Harold was quiet. He didn't look triumphant. He looked sad. "She really believes it," he said. "She believes the money is hers." "Grandpa," I asked, unlocking the car, "where did that money come from? The settlement? You said it was a workplace injury?" Harold paused, his hand on the door handle. He looked at the brick facade of the bank. "It was 30 years ago," he said. "I was working at the plant. There was a chemical leak. I wasn't burned, but I inhaled it. 2 other men died. I spent 3 weeks in the ICU. The company paid a settlement to keep us quiet." He looked at me. "I never told your grandmother the full amount. I never told Diane. I knew if they knew I had that kind of cash, they would look at me differently. They would see a payday, not a husband or a father." He tapped his chest. "That money was for the lungs I lost. It was for the years taken off my life. It was blood money. Lucy, Diane thinks she is entitled to it because she is family? No, that money was the price of my suffering. She has no right to it. None." I drove him home in silence. The revelation sat between us. Diane wasn't just stealing savings. She was stealing the compensation for his pain. The victory at the bank felt final, but it was just the opening salvo of the real war. Diane and Gavin realized they could not win legally. The bank was closed to them. The doctors were spooked. So they went for the nuclear option. They went for the cabin. On Saturday morning, I got a call from my cousin Miller. "Lucy, you need to get over to Grandpa's house. Now." "Why? What is happening?" "Mom and Dad are there, and Aunt Sarah, and Uncle Mike. They are having an intervention." My blood ran cold. An intervention. I drove to Elm Street so fast my tires screeched on the asphalt. There were 4 cars in the driveway. The front door was open. I ran inside. The living room was crowded. Diane was there, along with Gavin. Aunt Sarah was crying on the love seat. Uncle Mike was standing by the fireplace, looking uncomfortable. And in the center of the circle sat Harold. He looked small. He looked terrified. "It is for your own safety." "Dad," Diane was saying. Her voice was soft, reasonable. "We are all so worried. You are living here alone. You're forgetting things. The incident at the bank proved that. You were aggressive. You were confused." "I wasn't confused," Harold said. But his voice was thin. He was outnumbered. "We just want you to come stay with us for a while," Gavin said. He was leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "Just for a few weeks. We have the guest room set up. You won't have to worry about cooking or cleaning. We will take care of everything." "No," Harold said. "I want to stay in my home." "Dad, please." Aunt Sarah sobbed. "Don't be stubborn. If you fall down the stairs, nobody will find you for days. Do you want that? Do you want us to find you dead?" This wasn't an intervention. It was a siege. They were weaponizing his mortality to force him out, and I knew why. The moment he moved into Diane's guest room, the incapacity clause on the cabin deed would tick closer to triggering if he stayed there for 30 days. If they could get a doctor to visit him there and say he couldn't live alone, the land was theirs. I stepped into the room. Get away from him, I said. The room turned. Diane stood up. Lucy, this is a family meeting, she said. You are not welcome. I walked over to Harold and stood between him and Gavin. I know what you are doing, I said. I looked at Gavin. I know about the clause in the deed. I know that if he leaves this house, you get the cabin. Gavin blinked. His expression didn't change, but his eyes went flat. I don't know what you are talking about, he said. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, you aren't worried about his safety. You are worried about your real estate deal. Diane stepped forward. You are poisoning this family with your lies. We are trying to save him. Save him? I laughed. Like you saved him from his own money? Like you saved him from his bank statements? Uncle Mike cleared his throat. Lucy, that is enough. Diane has been taking care of him for years. You can't just come in here and accuse her. Ask her about Silver Thread, I shouted. Ask her about the $500 a month going to a fake company. Mike looked at Diane. Diane? Diane's face was a mask of granite. She is lying. Mike, she is mentally unstable. She needs help. I looked at Harold. He was trembling. He looked like he was about to give in, just to make the shouting stop. Grandpa, I said, do you want to go with them? No, Harold whispered. I want to stay here. Then you stay. I said. I turned to the group. He is not going anywhere. If you try to move him against his will, I will call the police, and I will show them the clause in the deed, and I will show them the invoices, and I will show them the letter from the credit union banning Diane from the premises. The room went silent. The mention of the bank ban was a heavy blow. Aunt Sarah stopped crying. Banned? Sarah asked. Ask her, I said. Diane grabbed her purse. This is ridiculous. We are leaving. Dad, when you come to your senses, call us. We are the only ones who truly love you. She marched out, Gavin trailing behind her. The others followed, looking confused and ashamed. When the door closed, Harold put his head in his hands and wept. They want me gone, he sobbed. They want me gone so they can sell the land. We can't just fight them with words. Grandpa, I said, we need armor. The next day, I called Pinecrest Senior Advocacy again. I need a home assessment. I told Elena, I need a neutral, third-party professional to come to the house. Interview my grandfather and document his competency. I need a piece of paper that says he is capable of living independently. We can do that. Elena said, we have a geriatric social worker on staff. The assessor, a woman named Mrs. Gable, came on Tuesday. She spent 3 hours with Harold. She checked the fridge. She watched him walk up and down the stairs. She asked him who the president was, what year it was, and how he paid his bills. Harold was brilliant. He showed her his new ledger. He showed her the calendar. He explained the fraud with a clarity that made Mrs. Gable take furious notes. At the end, she sat us down at the kitchen table. Mr. Weller is fully oriented and capable, she said. He has some mobility issues, but his home is adapted. I am filing a report stating that there is no medical or cognitive need for relocation. She handed us a copy of her preliminary notes. Keep this near the door, she said. If they come back with a doctor, show them this. It is a shield. We had the shield. Now we needed the sword. Marin called me on Wednesday night. Her voice was buzzing with energy. I found them, she said. Found who? The other victims. Marin said. I ran the address for Silver Thread, the drop box, against small claims court records in the county. And 3 other seniors. Lucy, 3, all of them in Briar Glen or Maple Barrow, all of them receiving invoices for home support services they didn't order. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a family scam. It was a predatory ring. Diane and Gavin aren't just greedy. Marin said, "They are systematic. They find vulnerable seniors, probably friends of Harold's, and they send these invoices hoping they just pay them out of confusion." I felt a wave of nausea. This was so much bigger than the cabin. "Marin, if we report this," I started. "If we report this," Marin said, "it goes criminal, real criminal, not just family dispute criminal. We are talking mail fraud, elder abuse, racketeering. Diane goes to prison, Gavin goes to prison. And the family name?" I asked. "Destroyed." Marin said, "Harold will be the father of the woman who scammed the whole town." I hung up and stared at the wall. This was the fork in the road. If I went to the police with Marin's findings, I would save the other victims. I would stop Diane forever. But I would also humiliate Harold. I would turn his final years into a public circus. The news vans would be on the lawn. I drove to Harold's house. I had to tell him. He listened quietly as I explained about the other seniors, about the pattern. He sat in his chair for a long time, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon light. "They are my friends," he said softly. "The people she is stealing from. They are my neighbors. We have to stop her." "Grandpa," I said, "but if we do, everyone will know." Harold looked at me. His eyes were tired, but they were clear. "They already know." "Lucy," he said, "they know something is wrong. They see Diane driving a new car every 2 years. They see Gavin playing golf while I wear a coat from 1980. Secrets are poison. They rot you from the inside." He stood up, using the armrest for leverage. "I am tired of the whispering," he said. "I am tired of being the confused old man in her story. If I am going to be the victim, I want to be the victim who fought back." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "The Heritage fundraiser is on Saturday," he said. "The Briar Glen Heritage fundraiser. It was the social event of the season. Everyone would be there. The mayor, the banker, the neighbors, and of course, Diane and Gavin, holding court at the center table. I am a founding member of the Heritage Society." Harold said, "I have the right to speak." "You want to make a scene?" I asked. "No," Harold said, straightening his tie in the mirror. "I want to make a statement." He turned to me. "I want you to stand next to me. Lucy, no matter what happens, no matter what they yell." "Will you do that?" I looked at him. This man who had saved $40,000 for me in secret, who had carried the weight of poisoned lungs for 30 years without complaint. "I will stand right next to you." I said, "Good," Harold said. "Then let's go start a fire." The Briar Glen Community Hall was a building that smelled of floor wax and old perfume, a scent that had probably been trapped in the heavy velvet curtains since 1975. It was the heart of the town's social calendar. And tonight, for the Heritage fundraiser, it was packed. I walked in with Harold on my arm. He was wearing his tuxedo, the one he hadn't worn since my grandmother's funeral. It was a little loose in the shoulders now, but he stood tall, his spine stiffened by a mix of terror and resolve. Diane was already there. Of course she was. She was on the planning committee. She was standing near the buffet table, holding a glass of sparkling cider, laughing at something the mayor said. She looked radiant in a silver gown that I knew cost more than my first car. Gavin was beside her, wearing a suit that fit too well, looking like the picture of a supportive, successful son-in-law. When she saw us, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. It was a glitch in the matrix. Then, the mask slammed back into place. "Dad!" she cried out, waving us over. The heads of half the room turned. "Lucy, I didn't know you were bringing him tonight. I thought you said he was having a bad week." She was setting the stage immediately. "He is sick. She is irresponsible." Harold didn't smile. He walked straight past her, nodding politely to the neighbors he had known for 40 years. "Good evening. Diane," he said. Diane's eyes narrowed. She stepped into our path, blocking our way to the tables. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low enough that only we could hear. "You are making a mistake. Go home. We have tickets." "Mom," I said, holding up the envelope. "You are going to embarrass us," she whispered. Her fingers gripped the stem of her glass so hard, I thought it would shatter. If he has an episode here. Lucy, I will never forgive you. He won't have an episode, I said. We walked past her and found our seats at table 4. It was near the front, close to the podium. I had arranged the seating chart with the event coordinator yesterday, claiming Harold's hearing required him to be close to the speakers. The dinner was an endurance test. People came by to say hello to Harold, speaking to him in that loud, slow voice people use for children and the very old. How are we feeling today? Harold? You look wonderful. Harold, good to see you out. Harold answered them all with sharp, concise sentences. I'm feeling quite lucid. Thank you. The tuxedo is wool, so I'm a bit warm. Diane watched us from the head table. She wasn't eating. She was watching, calculating, waiting for the shoe to drop. She knew something was wrong. She knew we had been to the bank. She knew about the assessment. But she didn't know we were going to do this here. At 8 o'clock, the speeches began. The mayor spoke about community spirit. The head of the Historical Society spoke about the new roof for the library. Then, the coordinator asked if any founding members wanted to say a few words. This was the moment. Diane stood up halfway, ready to accept the microphone on her father's behalf. She had a speech prepared. I was sure of it. Something about legacy and burden and the honor of caregiving. But Harold was faster. He stood up. He took the napkin off his lap and placed it on the table. He walked to the stairs of the stage. The room went quiet. Harold Weller hadn't spoken in public in 5 years. Diane froze. She looked at Gavin. Gavin looked at me. I stared straight back at him. Harold took the microphone. He adjusted the stand. He looked out at the sea of faces, his friends, his neighbors, his family. Good evening, he said. His voice rasped slightly, then cleared. Diane started moving toward the stage. She was moving with a purposeful stride. A smile plastered on her face that looked more like a rictus of panic. Dad, she called out, laughing lightly. Dad, why don't you sit down? You are tired. Harold didn't look at her. He looked at the crowd. My daughter tells me I'm tired, he said into the mic. She tells me I am confused. She tells many of you that I am fading away. The room murmured. Diane stopped at the bottom of the stairs. But I am not confused. Harold said, I remember everything. I remember when this hall was built. I remember who donated the lumber. And I remember a check I wrote last week. Diane's face went white. It was a check for $20,000. Harold continued. He spoke slowly, letting the number hang in the air. My daughter laughed at it. She told many of you in this room that it was a prop. She told you I was playing with play money. She made it a joke. He paused. He looked down at Diane. It was not a joke, he said. It was a test. Diane lunged for the stairs. Dad, stop this. You are having a delusion. I stood up. I walked to the edge of the stage, placing myself between Diane and the stairs. He has the floor. Mom, I said, get out of my way. Lucy, she snarled. He is humiliating himself. Harold continued, his voice gaining strength. That check cleared, he said. It cleared because I have saved money for 30 years. Money I kept separate, money I kept safe. But recently, I found that money was disappearing. Gaps of silence opened up in the room. Forks stopped clinking against plates. Small amounts, Harold said. $500 here, $300 there. Checks written to a company called Silver Thread Home Support. He looked at a table near the back, where Mrs. Higgins from the credit union was sitting. She looked down at her plate. I have never hired a company called Silver Thread, Harold said, but for 3 years, they have been billing me, and for 3 years, my daughter has been managing those bills, Diane screamed. It was a sharp, animal sound. That is enough. He is lying. He is sick. She turned to the crowd, her arms wide. Please forgive him. He has dementia. He doesn't know what he is saying. He is paranoid. I signaled the sound booth, the tech. A teenager named Kyle, who I had tipped $50 earlier, hit play. The speakers crackled. Then, a voice filled the room. It was Harold's voice, recorded 2 days ago in the quiet of his living room. "My name is Harold James Weller. Today is October 14th. I am of sound mind. I am recording this statement because I fear my daughter, Diane Brooks, will attempt to declare me incompetent to cover her financial crimes." The recording was crystal clear. It wasn't the voice of a confused man. It was the voice of a man giving a deposition. "I have discovered that Diane Brooks and Gavin Miller have created a shell company to siphon funds from my accounts. I have discovered that they intend to force me into their home to trigger a clause in a property deed. I am stating now, for the record, that I do not wish to move. I do not wish to be under their care." The recording ended. The silence in the hall was absolute. You could hear the hum of the ventilation system. Diane stood frozen. The color had drained from her face completely. She looked like a statue of shock. I walked up the stairs and took the microphone from Harold. He was trembling now, the adrenaline fading. I put my arm around him. "We aren't here to make a scene," I said into the mic. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. "We are here to correct the record. My grandfather is not senile. He is a victim of financial exploitation." I looked at Gavin. He was standing by the exit, looking like he was calculating the distance to his car. "We have the invoices," I said. "We have the bank records. We have the proof that Silver Thread Home Support is a shell company registered to a Dropbox." Gavin stepped forward then. He realized running wasn't an option. He had to brazen it out. "This is absurd," he shouted. He walked toward the stage, his face red. "You are manipulating him. Lucy, you are the one who needs money. You are a failed artist living in a studio apartment. You got him to sign that check because you are greedy." He pointed a finger at me. "You just want a payday," he yelled. "You don't care about him. You just want the $20,000. I looked at him. I looked at the crowd, who were watching this tennis match of accusations with wide eyes. "The money is not in my account," I said. I pulled a piece of paper from my clutch. "I opened a new trust account yesterday," I said. "The $20,000 was deposited directly into the Harold Weller Care Trust. I am the trustee, but I cannot withdraw a cent for personal use. The charter states that every penny must be used for Harold's medical care and home maintenance." I held up the paper. It was never a windfall. "Gavin," I said, "it was evidence. I don't want the money. I want him to be safe." Harold leaned into the microphone one last time. "I have revoked their access," he said. His voice was tired now. "I have updated my will. If anyone tries to move me from my house, if anyone tries to isolate me, it will be treated as a crime." He looked at Diane. "I am done being your prop. Diane." Diane looked around the room. She saw the faces of her friends. She saw the judgment. She saw the pity. The social capital she had spent decades building was evaporating in real time. She crumbled. It wasn't a graceful faint. She simply sagged, her knees giving out. She grabbed the edge of a table to hold herself up. "I did it for us," she wailed. The sound was raw and ugly. It wasn't stealing. It was family money. She looked at the crowd, pleading. "He doesn't spend it," she cried. "He just lets it sit there. We have bills. We have a mortgage. I took care of him for 10 years. I drove him to every appointment. I deserve it." She was confessing. She didn't even realize it. In her mind, her martyrdom justified the theft. "I am the good daughter," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I am the one who stayed. Lucy left. She left and I stayed." Gavin grabbed her arm. "Shut up, Diane. Don't touch me," she shrieked, shoving him away. "You said it was safe. You said he wouldn't notice." The crowd gasped. That was the nail in the coffin. "You said he wouldn't notice." Family members, my cousins, my aunts, who had been standing near the back, began to step away. They created a physical distance between themselves and Diane. They were severing ties before the fallout hit. They were the audience, and they had just decided on the villain. Diane looked at me. Her eyes were wild. "You ruined everything," she whispered. You ungrateful, spiteful little girl. You burned the whole house down. I didn't burn it down. Mom, I said quietly. I just turned on the lights. I took Harold's arm. Come on, Grandpa, let's go. We walked off the stage. The crowd parted for us like the Red Sea. Nobody said a word. Nobody tried to stop us. We walked past Diane, who was sobbing into her hands. We walked past Gavin, who was staring at the floor. His jaw clenched. We walked out into the cool night air. My car was parked in the first row. I helped Harold into the passenger seat. He moved stiffly, like a man made of glass. I got in and started the engine. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the wheel to steady them. We did it. I breathed. Harold didn't answer immediately. He stared out the window at the lit windows of the community hall. They will hate us, he said. What? The family, he said. Diane will spin this. She will say, I was cruel. She will say I humiliated her publicly. The cousins will take her side because she is the one who hosts Christmas. We will be alone. Lucy, let them hate us, I said. They stood by while she robbed you. They let it happen because it was easier than asking questions. Harold sighed. It is a lonely thing. The truth, I am scared. Lucy, he admitted. His voice was small in the dark car. Scared of what? Of tomorrow, of the phone calls, of the lawyers Gavin will hire. They won't stop. Men like Gavin. They don't accept defeat. They seek revenge. They will try to find a loophole. They will try to prove I was coerced tonight. I reached over and took his hand. Let them try. I said, we have the ledger, we have the recording, and we have the money in a trust they can't touch. Harold squeezed my hand. You won't leave? You won't go back to the city and disappear? I squeezed back. I am not going anywhere. I am staying right here. We are going to plant a garden this spring. Remember? You promised to teach me how to grow tomatoes. Harold smiled. A faint, tired ghost of a smile. Yes, tomatoes. We drove back to his house in silence. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving us both exhausted. The streetlights of Maple Barrow flickered past, rhythmic and hypnotic. When we got inside, the house felt different. It felt reclaimed. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I helped Harold out of his tuxedo jacket. I made him a cup of tea. He sat in his armchair, the same chair where they had tried to stage the intervention. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. Lucy, he said, look in the desk, the top drawer. I walked over to the old roll-top desk in the corner. There is an envelope, he said. I opened the drawer. There, sitting on top of a stack of crossword puzzles, was a thick manila envelope. It was addressed to me. Lucy. The handwriting was shaky. The date on the corner was from 6 months ago. I picked it up. It was heavy. What is this? I asked. Open it, Harold said. I tore the seal. Inside, there was a small brass key and a piece of paper with a 6-digit code written on it, and a letter. I pulled the letter out. It was just one sentence, written in the center of the page. The real proof isn't the money. I looked up at him, confusion washing over me. Grandpa? Harold took a sip of his tea. His hand was steady now. You asked me where the settlement money came from. He said, I told you it was a workplace accident. Yes, the chemical leak. That was true. Harold said, but it wasn't the whole truth. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. The company didn't just pay me for my lungs. Lucy, they paid me for what I saw. They paid me for the silence. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty house. What did you see? I saw them dumping it, he said softly. I saw them dumping the barrels in the marsh behind the elementary school. My breath caught in my throat. The elementary school, the one I went to, the one the whole town sent their children to. I kept the logs, Harold said. I stole the shipping manifest before they fired me. I kept them in a safety deposit box for 30 years. That is the key you are holding. He pointed to the envelope. Diane knew I had money. He said, but she never knew where it came from. She thought it was just a settlement. If she had known, If she had known I was sitting on evidence that could bankrupt the biggest employer in the county, she would have used it. She would have blackmailed them. He looked at the key in my hand. The money was just a distraction. Lucy, it was the shield. But that key? That is the sword. I looked at the brass key. It glinted under the lamplight. Why give it to me now? I asked. Because I am tired of carrying it, he said, and because I know now that you are strong enough to hold it. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Diane thinks the war is about a cabin, he whispered. She has no idea what war actually looks like. I stood there in the quiet living room, holding the key to a 30-year-old secret that could destroy the town or save it, the fundraiser, the check, the fake invoices. It was all just the opening act. I looked at Harold. He was asleep. I closed my hand over the key. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. This has been a journey through the hidden layers of family secrets, betrayal, and the quiet strength of those who are underestimated. I hope Lucy and Harold's fight for dignity resonated with you. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? Please let me know in the comments below. What would you do with the key? Do you expose the town's secret, or do you bury it to keep the peace? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, retribution, and the complexity of human nature. Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for your time and your attention.